Welcome everyone to the SUNY Online Teaching Webinar Series. I appreciate your attendance and your attention today. Thanks for joining us during your lunchtime. This slide just shows an overview of our fall series. We're working on planning some spring sessions for you at the moment, and we'll be releasing those before the end of the year. Today, we are on the third one you see on the screen, Strategies to Support Online Academic Integrity. And we will be sharing, I'll put a link in the chat for you where you can get all of the session recordings and slides so that you can go back at any time and also share those with your colleagues. That would be wonderful if you could help us disseminate some of this information and these resources. So I'm joined today by my colleagues, Alexandra Pickett and Rob Pierkowski. We are all over here in the online teaching at SUNY Online and happy to be joining you today. So I'm going to stop my screen share and let Alex pull up hers.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to have your lunch with us and to talk about supporting academic integrity in your online educational environments, your instruction, your activities. I'm very excited to be here with you today to talk about this issue and to start a conversation with you and share some tools and resources with you around this issue. So, like I said in the promo for this session, I consider this notion of cheating online as a pedagogical issue, not a technological one. And I really feel like applying a one-size-fits-all approach or a technology solution to a pedagogical problem misses the point and the opportunity to understand this issue from the online learning and the learner perspectives. So for me, it's complex and it requires work on everybody's part, and that's at the institutional level, at the instructional level, and of course at the student level. So for me, from an instructional design perspective, rather than starting with the question, how do we prevent cheating online? The better questions are, in my view, what exactly is it that you're trying to achieve? And what pedagogically is the best way to assess or to evaluate learning given the options and the limitations of your online teaching and learning environment. So like I said, today, I'm going to provide you with an overview of some strategies and some tools and some resources to kind of frame this issue and to assist online faculty and instructional designers to better understand how to support online academic honesty and to support online faculty and learner success. I really do think that it's important to frame this issue positively and constructively and carefully avoid unintentional perpetuation of negative assumptions and biases. I think, for example, any plagiarism detection tools and digital proctoring services can be used effectively in online teaching and learning environments, but they can also be misused unintentionally. So using the framing language that focuses on promoting authentic online assessments and supporting online faculty and learner success, to me, better serves the cause of ensuring online quality, academic honesty, integrity, and that's done by educating people and by building awareness in both faculty and learners on effective online practices rather than focusing on cheating and fanning fears or turning to threats or consequences and then, privacy invasion, for example. So we have a lot of resources and materials to share with you all today to promote authentic online assessments, promote academic integrity and honesty. And it might feel a bit like a fire hose coming at you because I have a lot I want to share with you. But all of the links will be posted in the chat and you'll be able to save the chat for all of those links. And of course, as Erin mentioned, this session's being recorded. And so you'll be able to return to it if you want to review some of the things that I will be sharing. So the first thing that I wanted to the other thing I want to mention was, as you come into the session, please go ahead and introduce yourself and a little bit about who you are and where you are, what institution you might be affiliated with, and anything else you'd like us to know, so that we can get to know who's in the room with us. I am Alexandra Pickett. I'm the Director of Online Teaching here at SUNY Online, and as Erin mentioned, she's here as well, Erin Maney, and I believe my colleague Rob Pierkowski is also here. And there may be SUNY folks in the room, instructional designers and faculty, and there may also be friends of SUNY who are in the room. So if you are not from SUNY, it'd be cool to know where you happen to be from, so that we know. All right, so let me start off with a resource here that is under the category for me of general tools and tips and strategies. So this resource we put together to focus in on the 9 principles of good practice for assessing student learning. And I think, these principles, there's 9 of them. I highlighted a couple of them that, to view assessment not as an end in itself, but as a vehicle for educational improvement. This is really speaking directly to a growth mindset. So shifting the perspective from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Also, I highlighted that a focus should be not just on what students know, but what they can do with what they know. So applying, creating assessments that encourage students to be able to apply what they've learned and demonstrate that for you, make their thinking and their learning and what they can do visible to you in the online environment. And then the other one I highlighted here was that assessment can help us understand which students learn best under what conditions. So again, in growth mindset speak, really using assessment as a way to rather than rank or grade students, to really be a part of the information that is available both to the student and to the instructor to assess how they're learning and how they might be able to improve their learning. And then this other one that I highlighted here about assessment working best when it's ongoing, not episodic. This is monitoring the progress that the learners are making towards their intended goal. Again, this is a growth mindset perspective that the focus is on improving learning. So you can come back to this resource and review it at your leisure if you like, and that's going to be the case with all these resources. This one, for example, I thought was really good. And it's quite extensive in terms, here's the table of contents of what it is targeting. And so it's about 20 pages long or so, this particular document. And so faculty focus is a wonderful entity that publishes things regularly, and periodically they do these special reports. And I found this one particularly interesting and relevant to this particular conversation. So here's like 4 typical online mistakes, and it's got those listed right here. Then it goes on to talking about authentic experiences, this again is assessing what they can do, what learners can do, and making sure that you're aligning your instructional objectives with your assessments. And I thought that was a really good read. And then making better multiple choice tests. This was also a really good one to help you if you're using any types of multiple choice tests. This is a really good one to refer to. And then, considering more than multiple choice. So I thought that was a nice, interesting juxtaposition and balance. So I'm going to invite you to come back to this one and to, mine it for things that might be just in time or relevant for you or interesting to you. The next resource, this is from Rutgers University, and this came out during COVID, as many things did, and they published this page to talk to their faculty about some of the decisions that faculty could make between proctored exams and alternatives, and perhaps even better alternatives than proctored exams. And so I really liked how they had this set up. They had like 10 alternatives to exams, which is very similar. I'll show you in a second a couple of other resources that are very, very similar to this. And then some advice for open book assessment, specifically in quantitative courses, and then some resources for writing good multiple choice exams. And then I'll show you this faculty focus article in a second with the 14 strategies, but the UC Berkeley and the IU Bloomington alternatives to traditional testing and exams and papers was also good. And I have a number of other resources that are very similar. So I'll show those to you in a sec. So this is one of them from Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And so it lists a bunch of different types of assessments that can be alternatives to the traditional, tests, whether they be multiple choice or other types of more traditional episodic type tests. So this is a nice little concise list of alternative types of assessments. And then I have this one that we put together that's very similar, and it just gives a description of the activity and then what to do with it. So very, very similar to these other lists of types of alternative assessments. This I wanted to share with you because they are very high quality little mini videos, and they are, they were developed some time ago, but they're still relevant in many ways. And they are from very well-known folks, including folks within SUNY and folks in the online educational world, both national and international, talking about online feedback and assessment. And so I included it in this list in case you're interested in checking out things in a more visual way, taking a look at some videos. So this one is from Brown, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring DEI into the mix and some of the issues with hidden curriculum and implicit bias. And so I popped this resource in for that purpose, and to just get you thinking and considering how you can really support assessment with equity and inclusion in mind. And so I like this resource because it's actually giving some suggestions to develop norms and guidelines for course participation, for learner participation, and to really explicitly articulate how that participation is going to be evaluated, and to then consider making it very clear how approachable you are and in what ways you want to be approached and what the norms are for approaching you, and trying to think about, with this DEI lens, trying to think about what are the assumptions that one has, and how can you sort of unpack those assumptions to make sure that you are really being equitable. So for example, not everybody knows what office hours are, or how to avail yourselves of them, or how to request an extension, or even that an extension might be permissible. So think about, there are a lot of assumptions, and the problem with assumptions is that they're kind of invisible to us who have them, and we all have them. So really think about how you might be using acronyms, for example, that not everyone will understand, but that one assumes are understood by all. So think about your approachability. Think about how you're going to address non-participation. And again, assumptions comes into that, right? You know, there's lots of reasons why students may, you know, become AWOL from the class. And then another strategy here is to invite students to self-assess their own engagement and participation in the class. So I really like this resource for that DEI lens that it brings to this conversation. Again, talking about norms, this is sort of piggybacks on the last one. And in this particular resource, it's talking about the 5 norms for high quality online learning, and they involve building trust, rigor, really making sure, you know, that you're challenging students, redefining time, and your approach to the use of time and to the types of activities and the time that they take, what format, what modality it's in, and then how you are supporting and encouraging the development of self-regulated learning skills and learner agency. And then, of course, diversifying the types of interactions so that you are creating lots of ways for learners' choices. It doesn't have to be lots of ways, but providing learners with some choices about how they make their thinking and their learning visible to you. So I really like this, this resource. It talks about the 5 competencies that an instructor could have. And then it starts to talk a little bit about rubrics. And I really like this, that they give you a free download of a rubric that you can adapt perhaps. And I'm going to talk in more depth about rubrics in a second. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so note-taking, again, this is under that category of general tips and tools and strategies. So really understanding how to help learners develop the skills they need to be successful. And one of those skills is note-taking, and it's an assumption, I think, that we may have that everyone knows how to take good notes. But again, that's an assumption. And so supporting learners to develop the skills that they need is something that one can do to assist learners to be to develop those skills and to be better at it. So what I love about this particular resource is that it talks about the research and behind behind the notion of helping students to develop note-taking skills. And so there's lots that you can learn and know about, you know, why note-taking matters. Evidently, taking more notes is better than taking less notes, and so supporting that and encouraging learners to do that is one way to help them get better at it. Explicitly teaching some note-taking strategies can make a difference, according to this resource. And then knowing that when you're taking notes, if you add visuals, so like if you make a little diagram, or if you draw a little picture associated with the notes that you're taking, that has a lot of impact. And this video actually shows you how to improve that particular note-taking technique. And so, you know, you could have some of these as resource, some of these ideas and some of these, like this video, as a resource for your students to help encourage them to develop those skills. And then this is also pointing to revision collaboration and pausing as a way to boost the power of note-taking. And so, you know, really thinking about how you're incorporating note-taking into the online learning process. Scaffolding, again, is a really good technique. And so it's got a lot of really good information that's backed by scholarly work to promote and to support helping you understand how to take better notes so that you can help your students understand how to do that too. And then they also suggest providing instructor notes to the students to assist them. They're also suggesting handwritten notes might be more powerful than online, taken notes. So I like this resource a lot because it's got a lot of information and it's backed by scholarly work and it can really help. So in this vein of giving learners options and thinking about alternative ways to assess learning, this is a list of tools. I can't remember who is actually, I think it's a friend of ours at Harvard that put this together. I think it's Patrice Prusco that put this together. But anyway, these are a bunch of resources that you can use, or tools that you can use to help students make presentations in asynchronous learning environments. And so if you're looking for a way to support student presentations, you can come here and see the different tools that it's suggesting for different use cases, and see if there's something here that that might align with something. And it also splits between synchronous and asynchronous presentation tools, which I particularly liked. So yeah, another resource for you to mine if you are using learner presentations. All right, so let's see. Then this next area here, I think we are going to talk about rubrics. And this is Cornell. I have a couple of resources here from Cornell. And what I like about this one is that it gives a good foundation for understanding why you might want to opt for using rubrics. And actually, the companion to this presentation is another presentation coming up, I think, next, and we'll mention that in a second, by my colleague Rob Pierkowski, and he's going to go into a lot of depth about the use and development of rubrics. But I'll go over a few resources here of my own. And what I love about this one is that it's really talking about how rubrics help instructors, and it helps make them more effective and efficient in the long run. And it really helps students really understand what's expected and how to meet those expectations. A rubric is a really powerful tool, and I would encourage you to use them, and or if you haven't ever used them, to begin small, but because it does take time to develop them, but it will help you to be more effective and ultimately more efficient in terms of grading learner work. And so I'm really, I'll encourage you to take a look at this resource. Again, it's saying to start small. So if you haven't used them before, you want to start small. This is another one that's giving some overview about the use of rubrics. And what I particularly liked about this one was that it provides examples, and you can go in and take a look at a variety of types of rubrics that are used for a variety of types of use cases, like for blogging or for papers or discussion boards or critical thinking. And then they have some online rubric tools and a wide variety. So I really like this this resource as a collection of links that you can take a look at. This is similar in terms of it provides links to example types of rubrics. So here I've highlighted these first online discussion, ePortfolio, and video project. This was developed for K-12, but the rubrics, when you look at them, are easily adapted for a variety, for higher level instructional environments. And so what I like is that it's covering a variety of types of rubrics for a variety of types of things. So you can come in here and take a look at the varied types of rubrics that you can then use to adapt to your own instruction and your own discipline and your own use cases. All right, let's see what I have here next. Oh, So this is another informational thing about rubrics that I thought was really well done, and that's telling, helping to explain the difference between holistic rubrics and analytic rubrics and single point rubrics. So it was really well done. And so it gives an example. This is an example of a holistic rubric. And then it tells you the advantages and the disadvantages of that. And then here's an example of an analytic rubric. And I use analytic rubrics in my own online instruction. And so, it gives the advantages and disadvantages of that type of rubric as well. And then they also are talking here about single point rubrics. So here's an example of that as well. So I thought it was a good primer to help to explain the differences of these varied types of rubrics, and they have, different advantages and disadvantages. And so you have to take a look at what it is that you're trying to do, and then adapt the right tool for the job. This PowerPoint I thought was really good, and it really looked at it looks at a lot of things, and I thought it would be really good to share with you so that you could see some of the authentic assessment activities that it is suggesting, and a lot of detail. And then it also provides this worksheet. This is one of the reasons I wanted to include it for you, because it helps you to kind of, if you're considering, and trying to align your learning objectives and outcomes with your assessments and with the content, which really is the magic formula for designing online instruction, right? What are you trying to achieve? How are you going to assess it? And what's the content necessary in order to present that content to the learner so that they can then apply and engage with it, and then you can design an assessment that maps to that. So I like this worksheet and thought that would be helpful. So take a look. It also gives some examples of an analytic and a holistic, and a couple of other types of rubrics here. So take a look at that. All right, let's see. So this resource from Penn State. Well, this is an example of an evaluating information rubric. So if you're having learners, if you're helping them to learn how to evaluate sources of information, this is a rubric that can help you to think about what it is that you are trying to guide learners to do in order to be able to evaluate information resources well. So I thought that was a really good example to share. It might not be applicable to everybody, but I thought it was a good example. All right, let's go on to types of activities. This really is continuing this notion of aligning your activities with your objectives. Sorry, you're aligning your assessments with your objectives and making sure that your activities and your content is aligned with your objectives, and that you're then assessing what it is that you have presented in terms of content and interaction and whatnot. So this resource is from Johns Hopkins, and there's a lot of stuff in this resource. It's really a resource about new online faculty development, but I kind of honed in on this particular section for you because this little video, it's only 5 minutes long, but it's really, really good, and it really lays out, how you can really align your activities and your assessments. And so I thought I would share it with you because it's really concise and well done. So this gallery of rubrics this is a whole website that has all different kinds of rubrics, and I went in and did a sort on undergraduate. So you can see here highlighted, it's highlighting undergraduate education. And so I just wanted to illustrate how you could come to this resource and then sort by different things to find resources that you might be able to adapt to your own use cases. What I thought was super cool about this resource was it has a welding rubric. So it's not just, reading and writing and demonstrating sort of higher order thinking. It's also practical in that it's showing how to assess things like welding. And there was another one in here that was really interesting. Can't remember what it was, but anyway, it's got French oral presentation in there. But anyway, so there's rubrics that can be designed for any type of activity, any type of discipline, whether it's an applied learning or an experiential learning type activity where someone has to demonstrate a skill, or whether it's sort of on the more traditional side in terms of reading and writing. So I just wanted to share that with you as a resource. This is my own blog grading rubric, and I will offer this simply as an example of how I evaluate my learners in my graduate level class. So these are graduate master's degree students, and they have to blog in my class. And so this is the blog grading rubric that I use. And I just want to say, like qualify this by saying, I'm not suggesting that you do what I do. I'm just showing this as an example of something that is a rubric and that I use in my own instruction. So for me, it's not just the quality of the post, but it's also things like the subject line is also super important to me in my instruction. And I also have students self-assess their blog posts, and I have them peer evaluate any blog post that they respond to from their classmates. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, I think. So this was a nice little description. It's not too long. It's really actually quite short, but it's really talking about how to assess discussion posts. And there's lots of different ways to do that, but having a good rubric will really help learners understand what it is that you're looking for, and how it is that they are going to be evaluated on their posts. And there's lots of different ways to do this. But this gives a really, brief overview of the different types of assessment that you can do with discussion posts. Here is another example of an asynchronous discussion rubric. And what I want to point you to over here is the criteria. And it's using frequency, the initial post, the follow-up postings, what the contribution is, if it's supported with citations, and then anything regarding the clarity and the mechanics of the post. So, so again, just as an example, so that you can see how this is laid out, what the criteria is, and what the specific elements are, from unacceptable to excellent in terms of the ratings in the rubric. Another example of a discussion rubric, like I said, there's tons of examples. And so you need to think about your own discipline, how you teach, what you are trying to achieve, what the objective is, and then design the rubric to meet those things. So all of these examples are to help you start thinking about all of those things so that you can design a rubric that is going to best meet the needs of your activity and assessment, and to help you and your students. All right, so again, this one was to look at the criteria and to look at the spread of points, and the way this is unsatisfactory, this is how they labeled it, which was different than this one. This was, a little bit different. So this resource is from Yale, and it's talking about the difference of formative and summative assessments, which I really like to help everyone understand. And it provides a really nice list of examples. then you know, a lot of different forms of assessments, and then it gives you some recommendations for formative assessments. So keeping criteria clear, so your expectations are well defined, encouraging students to do some reflection, giving students feedback that they can actually incorporate, they can actually use, and then collecting information that can help you improve the design of your course and your activities. And then it talks about summative assessment and things that you can do. So for example, using rubrics, providing clear questions. This is assessing comprehensiveness and making your parameters clear, and then considering blind grading. And there's lots and lots of information out there on grading and ungrading and blind grading and how to use grading. So that's another dimension to this whole conversation. This again is same group from Yale, talking more specifically about assessments and giving some recommendations, and specifically considerations for online assessments. And it's important to in an online teaching and learning environment, I've said it a couple of times now, but in order to know if your learners are learning, they have to do something that makes their thinking and their learning and how they're applying or able to apply what they're learning visible to you in the online teaching and learning environment. And so, so providing mechanisms where you ask students to explain their thinking, is an authentic mechanism. It's a way that you can get at that, you know, seeing whether or not your learners are learning. And then, you know, really looking at Bloom's taxonomy and thinking about higher order critical thinking skills and what the assessments are that are trying to, and if you look at Bloom's, you can look at actually the different categories of the higher order ones and map your assessments to ones that are actually addressing those higher order thinking skills. So you want to think about that, and not just you know, assume, I guess, that you are, because often when you start to analyze varied methods for assessing learning, there'll be no alignment with the actual objectives, or misalignment, or they're targeting, the assessments are targeting lower level thinking skills as opposed to the higher ones, which you are thinking that you are assessing, but you're not. So it's really important to think that through some, and you know, having that kind of a template that helps you think about what's the objective, what is the content, what is the assessment, and what level Bloom's that assessment is actually addressing, is a really nice way to sort of think about that in a big picture way to make sure that everything is in alignment and that you're assessing what you think you are, and or at least endeavoring to. So this has a bunch of information on increasing academic integrity, and so I thought that was a really good fit for this particular webinar. And you know, leveraging the LMS and the features of the LMS to support academic integrity. There's a lot of pretty easy things that you can do within your assessments, within the features and functionality of the LMS that you can leverage to make things you know, better in terms of supporting academic integrity. So thinking about those things, I think, is a good idea. Thinking about in-class presentations and how you are going to support that, what technology you need and how you're going to evaluate it. And the same with papers and other writing assignments, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. You know, considering all of that, I think is really important in supporting academic integrity in your online instructional environment. Peer assessment is a really cool. I mentioned that I have my learners in my class peer assess each other's blog posts, and the reason I do that is because it helps them to learn how to apply the rubric on work that is not their own, and then they're better able to understand and assimilate and use the rubric to assess their own work. So they see examples of peer assessment of things that they're peer evaluating their classmates' work, and then that helps them to learn the rubric and understand the rubric, and then they are better able, because they've seen examples of it and done it with others, they're better able to apply it to themselves. So that's one of the main reasons I do it. And so this resource here from Cornell is all about using peer assessment and some considerations for using peer assessment, and then how to get started with peer assessment. So I'll invite you to come back to this resource and mine it if you're interested in exploring using that in your own instruction. And then this is another resource in teaching learners how to evaluate each other. And so this is really, really good advice and suggestions on, if you're going to do this, how you can do it to make sure that you set it up well. It's not something that anyone is born knowing how to do. People have to be taught how to do this, and to do it well, they have to have practice and experience doing it, and a good rubric and good feedback and guidance from the instructor as they're doing it. So for example, in my class, when students self-assess and peer evaluate any of the work, and I have them do it both in their discussion posts as well as in their blog posts. So I use that peer assessment in both of those types of activities. For the first module, maybe even the first module and a half, I am going in and giving them some correction. So if they don't peer assess accurately, or if they don't self-assess accurately, I give them little coaching and little nudging to help them to understand better. And if they forget to do it, I nudge them also because it's required. So yeah, you have to teach people how to do this, and so this is a good resource for that. This here is the resource on self-assessment and why that is important, and considerations, and how to get started. So peer assessment and self-assessment to me are two halves of the same coin. And like I said, I have my learners in my course do both for discussion as well as for their blog posts. Let's go on to assessing interaction. I like this article, particularly because it used, it has an example of assessing interactive qualities in distance learning courses. And so, it really shows this is about assessing the distance learning course. So this would be for you to or your department to think about how well you are doing some of these things. So this is highlighting social rapport, instructional design, levels of interactivity, and impact. So I highlighted a couple of things here just to see, just to show sort of the varied levels here from least to highest, and just as a resource. And this one is specifically for asynchronous, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, for asynchronous. And I have one for synchronous as well that I'll show you in a sec. This is a cool resource that SUNY has that collects and presents innovative assessments. And I think this is not just limited to online. I think the collection and the repository is broad. But if you had a particular assessment strategy that you use and would like to submit it to this repository, you would do so. You would do so here, and then it'll appear in the varied categories of assessments that are represented here. So so take a look. You can mine it for innovative assessments, or you can contribute your own innovative assessments to this repository. Oh, here's the asynchronous online teaching observation checklist. So if that is something that your department or your institution is thinking about doing, this is a nice, really nice resource for doing observations. So if you're an administrator and you are in charge of you know, a group of online faculty and you're thinking about doing observations, this is a nice resource for that. All right, let's move on to synchronous rubrics and types of activities and modalities to support academic integrity in the synchronous environment. So this is an example rubric that has a bunch of different categories. So participation and preparation, contributions, timeliness, and then here's the criteria and the descriptions and the point values associated with that. So that's just an example of one way that you can use a rubric for synchronous participation in a synchronous online course. Here is another resource for assessing both synchronous and asynchronous activity. And so you can come here and look at the different examples that are presented. It's just a bunch of example rubrics here that can be applied both to asynchronous or asynchronous instructional modalities. And so another list of types of rubrics for those purposes. Here we have another synchronous evaluation rubric. And so again, as an example to help you think through how you might go about using a rubric to assess synchronous online activity in your online course. And then over here, again, that resource, that repository that you can mine. I just went in and did a search for synchronous discussion rubric, and then I found this one. And I like this one because it was you know, it was kind of detailed, and this is the criteria: attendance, participation, disposition, preparation, engagement, and then it gives you all of the varied levels from meets or exceeds to did not participate at all. Again, this is the synchronous online teaching observation checklist. So similar to the asynchronous one that I just showed, this is one for synchronous online. So if you are an administrator and looking for a way to do observations of synchronous instruction, this is a good overview and resource to adapt. All right, so this section of the presentation is about really the discussion. You know, I started this presentation with talking about some of my opinions and my ideas around reframing the discourse around which, you know, sometimes tends to be focused on cheating and cheating online, reframing that to thinking more about how do we support online and learner and online faculty success, and doing that by supporting using specific techniques and tools that support academic honesty and integrity. And so this is a nice article that I thought I'd share with you to add to the mix for this conversation, and to think about how, you know, the one size fits all approach of proctoring is, you know, in my view, kind of an easy way out, and a way that also can perpetuate some of the biases, the implicit biases that we may have culturally and societally, and this happens kind of unconsciously. So to really just think deeply, I'm not saying that proctoring can't be used well or that one shouldn't. Absolutely, there are occasions and use cases where proctoring and using online tools for that is essential. But just really thinking about, you know, the fact that to a hammer, everything is a nail, right? So there's not a one size fits all thing, and you really need to think deeply about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and does that make sense, and what are the potential downsides from the student perspective and or from the faculty perspective. So I invite you to check this article out. It's very well written. Then I wanted to also add this paper that was published in the online learning journal that is, a very well-known and reputable scholarly journal, and so this article is really talking about the same issue, that the perception that academic integrity associated with online tests is compromised due to undetected cheating that leads to artificially higher grades. That was kind of like what they were focusing in on, and then how ultimately, as a result of this study, they are talking about implications and suggestions for strategic interventions. And so I invite you to read this article as well. You can get the download of the full article here on this page, and this just to add to the mix and your understanding of the broader issues and the broader work that's going on in this space. This is a resource that we developed to help faculty and instructional designers really think more actionably about what you can do to support academic honesty. And so things like designing unique assessments, providing resources and models and expectations and instructions that make, what you're trying to achieve very explicit to the learners. Focusing on writing and requiring iteration is another approach. And so, I'll invite you to take a look at this, and we update this list of resources here regularly, so you'll see new resources being added there regularly. Another article that is, intended to give you some additional information to add to this sort of thinking and this mix about the issue. And here's the article that I mentioned earlier, that was the 14 simple strategies. This is Faculty Focus, again, a really good publication. They come up with lots of really good things to help, practical and actionable suggestions and resources. And so again, we've talked about many of these, focusing on higher order thinking, varying the types of questions, reminding students about academic integrity policies and consequences, having them, sign off on the fact, that they have seen it or read it or understand it, offering different versions of the same tests, making sure everyone has a plan for having technical issues, so that doesn't become, an excuse. So it's a nice little, consolidated list of some simple strategies that you can actually implement easily. This is another kind of provocative titled list, article from Inside Higher Ed. But I really think that there's some important stuff that adds to this conversation, and especially during the COVID, pivot, where if people are, this particular quote is talking about how under stress and pressure, when things are not clear, there are temptations and opportunities. And so, what contributes to learners feeling isolated and not feeling like they're connected, I think contributes to that. And so this list here, I thought were really, it was a really good, concise list to help frame this and help think about this and help make some specific actionable improvements in the way that you address assessment and address academic integrity. I like how they said, the better question than how do you stop cheating is how can you best facilitate and assess learning. I really agree with that. All right, so that was that. This
Hey,
morning,
Alex,
yeah.
I just need to jump in. We're at 12:54 right
Oh,
now.
okay. All right. So I know that we were meant to go until 12:45. So those of you that need to jump off, you're welcome to. Again, the resources will be shared with this presentation. The presentation is recorded. I'm going to stay here and continue plowing through these resources for you. So you can stay if you like until 1, and then the recording will be available, and the links and resources will be available. And I appreciate, thanks Rob for the reminder, and thanks everyone for tuning in. I don't know how.
Alex, you might want to turn off your share just for a second and then turn it back on, because it's not updating as you're talking about the resources.
Oh, when did that stop?
I don't know. It froze just a couple of minutes ago. So
Okay. All right.
now we're seeing your cursor. So
All right, so sorry about that. Somehow I must have hit the pause. Sorry about that, everybody. I do a whole presentation on supporting online learners' success. And so I'm not going to go over this because I could spend a whole hour talking with you about online learner self-regulated learning strategies and developing a sense of self-efficacy and what faculty can do to support that in their online learners, and what successful online learners do and demonstrate in these skills. These are actually skills that they have, and how faculty can help learners to develop those skills. So I'm sharing the resource with you so you can take a look at it. But if you look at the playlist for our webinars, you'll see I just did one, I think last month, on this particular topic. This is a playlist from our SUNY Center for Professional Development on academic honesty. So they periodically do events, and they collected this playlist around the topic of academic honesty. So you can take a look at that. This was a study that was done to really understand things from the learner perspective. And it was really interesting what learners perceive as cheating. And, they really don't think of using Googling as cheating. They don't think of helping each other as cheating. They think of using Chegg the same as they think of using Google, and they think about Googling as an aid, right? So the point is not how they got to the answer, but that they understand what the answer is and can produce that, right? So there really can be a disconnect between what learners, and professors think about what constitutes cheating. And a way to alleviate that, or to remedy that, is to be explicit. You have to tell them. Like in any relationship, you can't assume that they just know. You have to tell them specifically what constitutes cheating in any particular type of activity. So if you don't want them to collaborate with other learners, let's say their roommate is there and they get some help from their roommate. If you don't want them to do that, if it's a truly independent work and you want it to be representative of independent work, then you just have to tell them that. So anyway, this was a really interesting, eye-opening, in some ways, shocking study that was done to really understand that disconnect between what learners think is cheating and what professors think is cheating. It's not always, it's not straightforward. All right. So that's the end of the presentation. And so now I'm going to check and see what questions there might have, if anyone has them. We have a little bit of a minute to talk. Any questions came through in the chat?
None that we haven't answered. So
I see a lot of good stuff in the chat. If you want, in your chat, open up the chat box and click on the little 3 dots in the where you write your message, and it'll give you the ability to save the chat. And so all of the links and all of the discussion that we had in this session will be saved. And so if you want to keep that and have it right now, you can do that. I do have, some bonus material. So here is the webinar playlist page where you can see the recordings of the presentations that we're doing this fall. So the recordings will all be posted here. Here's the playlist of the fall recordings, and here's the ones we did last semester and so on. So you can come back here and see what's coming up next. The next one will be tips for ensuring authentic online assessment. And that'll be November 30th at the end of this month. And Rob is going to be facilitating that one. And then the next one in December will be implementing an online course quality review and refresh process with Oscar. So I also wanted to mention that the SUNY Online Summit, save the date for the SUNY Online Summit, which will be this year, both face-to-face and virtual. And it will be in Syracuse, New York, face-to-face. And there is a small registration fee for joining us face-to-face, and it will be live streamed for free as a virtual event. So I just want you to know the dates. The website's not quite done, registration is not quite done. So we'll be announcing that in a bit. You are welcome to join as a SUNY fellow, and if you are a SUNY online teaching fellow, and if you are within SUNY, you can pick any of these roles from any of these roles. And if you are not from SUNY, you can opt to be a friend of SUNY. So we have options for both SUNY and non-SUNY folks. We also want you to join our online teaching community to continue the conversation here. If you are interested in joining the community, this is a networking community. I invite you to come here and to join, and we continue conversations on varied topics. So yeah, join us. If you'd like a badge for attending this presentation, you can fill out this form, and you'll get a participation badge for having come and hung out with us for the lunch hour here. And the badge, you have to get a Credly account, and the Credly is our platform, and we offer a variety of types of badges. The community participant badge is the one that you would friend of SUNY, if you are not a SUNY employee, is one of the badges. And here's the participant badge that you could get if you were interested in that. Our online teaching website is a very, very rich, deep resource of both extemporaneous thinking. So we have blog posts here, as well as resources to mine and to, ways to engage, and all different types of activities here, and resources and information. So I invite you to learn more about SUNY online teaching. And then you can also subscribe to our newsletter, or our magazine that we put out every month, the Online Teaching Gazette. So, I also had some bonus resources for you. We have our interested in teaching online self-paced course. So this is just a website. Anybody can come here and take this course. And I do a whole presentation just on this, but this is a bonus resource. The Are You Ready to Teach Online resource is a bonus resource. The Teaching Online Step by Step is another very full, rich resource to mine if you're new to online teaching or instructional design. This one kind of frames it all from the Oscar perspective, as well as from the remote teaching perspective. And then we have a bunch of self-paced and self-serve resources that are available. One of them is our new templates for the new Brightspace environment. So if you use D2L You can come and download these templates and take a look at them. They're free and openly licensed, and anyone can download them. And that's a wrap. All right. The link to the last one about the D2L template. So if you go to HTTP DLE templates, believe that will work. Let me check. Nope, it's DLE, capital DLE. So let's try that again. Let's try that one. Oh my God. Why is that not working? Oh, I know why. It's got to have a bit.ly. Let's try that one.